Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Hello, people, and welcome to the National League. When we let others talk before we actually interrupt and do all the madness and banter and all the stuff, hit that like button if you're here. Talking points about today. Are Chelsea in a big dilemma? Should Maresca stay? Should they let him go? What are the problems with Chelsea? Why did he fail to be Ipswich? Liverpool, of course, come from 1-1 for Van Dijk to actually give them the 3 points. Liverpool are loading to win the league. Big summer ahead of them, as Arne Slot has said. And the fact that Arsenal will get smashed 4-5-0 against Real Madrid and be knocked out. Of course, that is the rational talk. If you have any brain, you know that this Arsenal team will collapse. They will absolutely be smashed against Real Madrid, as a lot of people are telling us. Arsenal have been backwards, of course. Arsenal are absolutely shit. They're not going to win anything. Arteta is the back coach, and Ancelotti is miles better than him. That is the rationale behind the talk. We'll talk about all of that as well, as you guys say. But before we go on, it's over 200 people in the house. Hit that like button, people. Let's get to 200 likes live. And all the guys' channels. Rory now is dropping 2 videos a day, which is, I'm so proud of him. My younger brother dropping 2 videos a day. His videos are doing really well. It's very entertaining, actually, when he talks about how Arsenal are and everything. So go Rory Talks Football. It's in the description. Follow him on TikTok and Instagram. Dan as well, great guy, goes to the games and talks rational about Chelsea. He doesn't get carried away with everything that is happening in the club. Just speaks his mind. Jamie's story is here, of course, with all the stuff that is happening. Follow Jamie on the Football Story on Instagram. Does a lot of work with live scores and other platforms as well. With that Irish accent, it just gets reviews. You know that as well. Tom Little, yes, Tom Little might be joining us, might not. Staffy, who was supposed to be in the football terrace, but he isn't. Maybe he's gonna wake up and talk. How's everyone doing?
Doing well.
Yeah, good.
You're good then?
Yeah, right. I am, because what I've learned to do this season is remove football from controlling my day-to-day life.
But you're a season ticket holder, though. That is every week you wait for the game in the weekend to go watch Chelsea play football. Listen, the first Premier League game I went to was Everton versus Arsenal in 2019 in Goodison Park. And I've spoken to the families that go to the game. I've had a woman with a little kid, and she told me that her father used to be a season ticket holder. And she said that we wait all week to go to the games, and it dictates how we feel about the club. And it doesn't matter if Everton lose or win, we just wait for the game. And I listened to her, and she was very emotional. Crystal Palace fans told me this when I went to Crystal Palace a couple of summers ago, game against Southampton. But you don't. You're always smiling. I love that about you, to be honest. You're always smiling, happy. But you must be frustrated with Chelsea. You must be very frustrated.
Incredibly frustrated. It's a very, very weird time for Chelsea right now. But yeah, I just feel like I don't let it be the be all and end all of how I feel as a person. But yeah, away from football, I'm good. Around football, I mean, I don't know if it's ever been worse.
Really? You think this is the worst?
Oh, I'm being serious.
You finished 10th. You finished 10th under Antonio Conte in the second season.
I felt like that was, Chelsea had a couple of seasons like that where you think, right, we'll have a blip, we'll get back on the horse, we'll go again. No, we're probably likely to sort of go 12, 6th, 6th, 7th, something like that, which is just showing, for me, progress that I don't think is acceptable when you've spent £1 billion. But look, I'm not a billionaire. Maybe I don't have the same outlook on £1 billion as they do, but I just think it's a crazy amount of money to have results that are that minimal, to be honest with you.
Someone said Dan is the Chelsea fan. I hate the league. Does that mean you hate every Chelsea fan?
That's like the biggest backhanded compliment I've had.
It's the least one I hate from all of them. But why are there problems at Chelsea?
Well, I mean, where do we start? Do we want to talk about off the pitch? Let's talk about on the pitch.
I want to talk today. I want to talk, to be honest with you, I want one show where we don't talk about ownership. We don't talk about Arsenal project. We don't talk about Liverpool. We want to talk on the pitch. Why are Chelsea bad?
I think tactically right now, Maresca's getting it wrong. I think tactically he is failing to set his teams up well enough during the week in preparation for the game that he's then having to try and make adjustments at half-time to save the games. I think that's been evident recently. I mean, first half form has been a huge problem for Chelsea. We've been diabolical in games and starting them for quite some time now. I think probably at least 2-3 months. I feel like Chelsea have really failed to come out of the blocks well. And then it's kind of come down to him having to make changes, which I feel like I've given him credit for at times, but sometimes it's only been enough, like we saw at the weekend, to get a draw. So I think that's a huge issue. And I think also mentality-wise, I think slightly off the pitch, but what Maresca's said in and around press conferences, I think has had a huge effect on this young Chelsea team as well, to where they can sort of place their beliefs in what they're capable of doing. And ultimately, I think that the final thing away from Maresca is that some of the players just aren't good enough.
And that is what when we disagree. Some players are not good enough. A lot of people yesterday have spoken about the recruitment of Chelsea and some of the players. And I still think that Chelsea has a good enough team to actually make top 5. The problem is the manager, his tactics. He's not. By the way, my evidence is that Malo Gusto was one of the best right backs in the league last season when he was doing overlaps, when he was playing a regular right back role. Now this season, he's asking him to invert, be in the 10, sometimes crash the 18, do this and that. The wingers are isolated. Palmer last season was one of the best players in the league. Now he's not. Caicedo is being left on an island. Yesterday against Ipswich highlighted what I say when a defensive midfielder is left by himself to fend for everyone that gets past the other two, Enzo and Cole Palmer. And I think it's the manager's issue. The players are good enough. He's not finding the right combination, the right tactics to play. He thinks he's Pep Guardiola. He thinks I need to follow everything that Pep does. I don't need overlapping fullbacks. I'm going to play Cole Palmer in the 10, thinking that he's Kevin De Bruyne. Well, he thrives on the right side, coming into the 10 from the right side. I think it's a managerial issue. The players are good enough. By the way,
we had 34 shots yesterday, though.
They were playing well at the start of the season as well. You know what I mean? I
agree, by the way. I think there's a higher ceiling for this squad of players, definitely. I do think we're starting to see some of these players probably be inconsistent over enough period of time to suggest that they're not quite good enough for the next level. I mean, look, Nicholas Jackson yesterday missed an absolute sitter. People are saying he had this timeout injured and that's why Chelsea's goals dried up. He hadn't scored for 8 games prior to that as well. He's in an incredibly bad run of form. I think him and Cole Palmer are without a goal in their last 13 or 14 games each. So I'm not saying Cole Palmer isn't good enough, by the way. I think that's hugely down to Maresca. But maybe when we look at some of the wingers that we've brought in and a couple of defenders, a goalkeeper, I think it's evident to see that they're not quite good enough to be competing for Champions League places. So I think there's a mix. But ultimately, there are managers out there that get more out of these players, this player's level, than I think what Maresca's doing right now.
I think this has been Maresca's worst week at Chelsea, to be honest. I think the rotation against Brentford, which cost you 2 points, which then didn't make sense because he didn't use some of the players he'd rotated against Legia Warsaw anyway. You started 3 right-backs against Legia Warsaw to then not start a right-back against Ipswich and put Chalobah at right-back, which is just baffling. And then to come out after the game and blame the atmosphere at Stamford Bridge for the reason that you went 2-0 down against an Ipswich team that were missing all 3 of their top scorers this season. I just think that's terrible. And how you can blame the fans for going 2-0 down is
Rory, do
obscene.
you know the quote, just in case people haven't seen it? Because, I mean, what he said, I think, is hugely detrimental to his
I've actually got the quote because I made a video on it. The quote was, he said, "I think we lost confidence because we conceded because of the environment. Our goalkeeper plays short, but then he goes long for the second goal because of the environment." So basically, the fans get anxious when Robert Sanchez is on the ball, understandably, because of how often he cocks it up trying to play out from the back. And then so he goes long, and he was getting booed, I think. It goes long, and then you concede. I'd be asking, why is it that from a goal kick going long, are you conceding to Ipswich Town? Like, defensively, why are you not set up to deal with that? But yeah, I think blaming it on the fans is absolutely mental.
I actually was thinking about this yesterday, and I think there are about 12 to 13 managers that are better than him. Why do Chelsea spend that much money, but then go and hire a manager that there are plenty of managers better than him in the league? Like I'll take Marco Silva over. I'm just gonna not name them, but the 12 teams ahead of him, it's just from 11th all the way up top, are better than him in terms of tactics, experience, resume. Now I'm like, what are you doing, Chelsea board? And I don't want to go to the off the pitch stuff, but Enzo Maresca with this crop of player must be doing good. And the evidence for some of the Chelsea fans is that, but we played good in the beginning of the season. Well, what about now then? What happened? What happened now?
It was kind of the opposite last season, though, wasn't it, with Pochettino? Like, they started poorly, then they started to play well. Pochettino wanted to bring in some of his own players. They said no. So they were kind of brought in Maresca to keep someone that would just listen to them and, like, not kind of challenge the board's program, or if that's what you want to call it, like the buying and selling of players. I just think it's a shift almost in mentality for Chelsea fans, because they've been so used to having Abramovich, where it was just like, we'll buy the best players, doesn't matter the money. And I think obviously financial fair play has come into it. It was a lot more. But this new ownership, it's not about buying the best players. It's about buying players that potentially have resale value and embedding them into the squad, having a manager that will do what you want. And like, if we get top 4, great, but if we don't, then it's not like the end of the world. Like, I think even at the start of the season, remember when you were in the Champions League, the title race, and it was like, yeah, we're not in the title race, and it's just like stuff like that you don't hear from Chelsea. And if that had been a Chelsea manager under Abramovich, he would have been sacked on the spot, literally.
I don't think they would have got the job.
Yeah, exactly. He probably would have. Yeah, Maresca wouldn't have came in probably, but yeah, I just think it's a shift in mentality, and it's just that's the difficulty when you have like a new ownership. You don't really know what way it's going to go, and for Chelsea at the minute, it looks like it's going the wrong way.
So how did Chelsea get better? Go ahead, Rory.
Well, so I think the general worry would be that, okay, so under Pochettino, who I think Pochettino started at the start of the 23-24 season, started with a far more destabilized squad, a group of players that were more raw, had less Premier League experience, and improved as the season went on. And grew into the season, which to me suggested Pochettino's influence on that squad was a good thing. The more that squad was influenced by Pochettino, the better it became and the results picked up. With Maresca, he inherited a far more stabilized squad, and it's almost like the more his influence has gone on, the worse it's got. And I saw a stat that the last time Chelsea scored in the first half of a game was the 25th of February. So however many games since the 25th of February that is, you're not scoring in the first half, which again, to me suggests, again, he's not setting up for games correctly. He doesn't know going into games what the best way to attack an opposition is. And things like that, I think I would be quite concerned about.
How did you get better then? Just buying experienced players and just you get better.
I think that would help massively. I know that sounds incredibly like sort of cliche and simple to do, and it doesn't always work out. But I think in terms of where Chelsea's squad is at right now, I think experienced players with probably a higher level would be incredibly useful for this team right now to see itself moving up the table. And I also think for Chelsea to get better, they probably do need to replace their manager with someone who's a little bit more equipped for the job. I mean, I was very vocal at the time when we were sort of looking for a replacement for Graham Potter and Pochettino, that there were better managers out there than the two candidates we ended up hiring. I remember at the time Luis Enrique was sort of mentioned and the club sort of rejected him. Hansi Flick rejected the club. I think Nagelsmann was on that list. I think all three of those managers were of a level that I think Chelsea would have looked at previously. Whereas now, I think, like Jamie said, that they don't want to hire someone that's going to question them, which is, I think, what ended up happening with Pochettino. And it just ends up being a relationship that doesn't work and doesn't focus on business first. And I think ultimately that's where Chelsea are right now. But to fix it, there's more money that needs to be spent, which is incredible after the amount that's been spent already.
I think the Club World Cup would help as well, but also the problem with UEFA might not. Like with the hotel and the women's team, you need to play Champions League. And if UEFA bans you because of these sales, you need to fix your finances. That means you cannot buy more players. A lot of people are saying, but Chelsea sell well. You sell well when you do well. You're not doing well at the moment. Winning the Conference League is not going to make the player stock go high. It's not going to happen.
All the players we've sold were, and we've got good money for, off the back of a team that won the Champions League. Havertz, Mount, Kovacic. We got good money for those players because they'd won something that was classed as like a very, very big achievement in football. Whereas now, if we tried to sell some players, I'm not sure the money's going to be there for the same type of level. Like, imagine we sold Lewis Hall for 30 million. I'm not saying he won the Champions League, but he was classed as a young player coming into a really good squad. Whereas now, I think we've got a couple of players that have sort of broken into this squad, but wouldn't be deemed as good as Lewis Hall because they don't view the Chelsea squad as being as good as what it was at the time Lewis Hall broke into it.
Do you know what's interesting as well with like Chelsea's model? And you obviously come into like an elite team, but like as you said, a team that's like winning trophies, competing, have a really good academy. Players are looked at from their academy as like really valued, like Lewis Hall. But when you start buying players from outside and bringing them in, your academy players obviously aren't getting the same amount of opportunities because you need to obviously keep the players that are there like continuously playing or like competing. So then the value of the players that you would sell for that, like say Lewis Hall was 30 million sold outright and that goes straight into the books. So like those players you're not bringing in and then you're having to offset it like in different ways. So it actually the money doesn't start to add up, and that's where you start getting in more financial difficulty around like say selling the women's training ground or whatever way you need to do it to obviously finance it. That could be the other side of what we're seeing now, where it's like you can't actually just splash the cash of it because you don't have those academy players to be able to sell to justify how it works.
Even even the Club World Cup is you're probably going to get about 100 million from it if you can get to the late stages. But Champions League, if you're getting into the knockout stages of that, you're getting 100 million-ish from that anyway. And that's every year. Club World Cup is every 4 years. So if you spread that 100 million over the 4 years, it's 25 million a year. And with the way that Chelsea are at the moment, it's highly, highly unlikely that you'll be in the following Club World Cup in 4 years' time. So it's a bit of a bonus now, but it's not enough to really make a dent on what you need to do compared to Champions League football, which is looking less and less likely.
Chelsea can finish 7th behind Aston Villa, Man City, and Newcastle. I think he should get sacked if they finish 7th, to be honest, even if he wins the Conference League, because that is just going backwards, basically. However, the other side is saying, give him more players and let's see what he does next season. Give him an Osimhen and give him an experienced winger next season. Let's see what he does. I doubt that Maresca will be able to win Chelsea a league title. I don't see. There was a comparison with Arteta in the beginning. I'm like, Arteta was more adaptable. And Arteta didn't have the squad that Chelsea had. Arteta didn't have a 200 million players in the midfield. Arteta didn't have Cole Palmer. He had Aubameyang and Lacazette who used to fight. Who used to not follow instructions. Maresca has players. Like he has everyone has gone backwards, apart from Caicedo, who has had a good season, in my opinion. But the rest of the Enzo Fernandez, maybe. But still, people think that Enzo Fernandez, because he creates chances, he had a good season. Have you watched him against Ipswich defensively? When the guys just kick the ball right next to him and just jog, and he can defend. You need to find the right balance for this guy to play. I actually think that Chelsea, number one, Cole Palmer needs to play right wing. Lavia needs a replacement, and he needs to be next to Caicedo, that replacement. Jadon Sancho might be good enough or might not. He hasn't shown me enough, not because he scored a goal yesterday. He showed me that he's good enough for Chelsea. Pedro Neto has had a little bit of a... Pedro Neto is a dilemma for me because I don't know. Is he good? Is he bad? Has he failed at Chelsea? I don't know. Actually, don't know. Does anybody have an idea? Does Partey Not failed at Chelsea?
I think we I don't know. Sometimes, but you know, when you sign a player, you expect them to kind of take them to the next level. But I just think we're seeing the Pedro Neto, maybe not even the Pedro Neto that was at Wolves, but he just hasn't been able to take that next step from like the next step that you need to take when you move up to, like, say, a Champions League competing team. He's just like a player that does okay, you know. He'll maybe contribute a bit in the counter attack. He'll get the ball. He'll do a few dribbles. He'll maybe contribute with the odd goal, but he doesn't seem to have that ability to be able to like evolve into a player that can like maybe drag a Chelsea team to like a win or like get them back on level terms.
Yeah, I think when you spend, what do you spend on him? Like 60 mil?
60, yeah.
I think when you spend 60 million quid on a player from a team like Wolves, the expectation should be that their level goes up.
Yeah,
when they join. And like you said, I'd argue he's been less influential than he was at Wolves. And I think that's the problem. You look at it, he's probably, based on this season, probably a 30 to 40 million pound player, but you paid 60, which means then really he has to be starting week in, week out. Is he good enough? I don't think so.
I'm not sure if he's good enough for Chelsea to challenge for the title. The problem is, if I'm looking at Pedro Neto, he's not even a starter for Chelsea sometimes. He's in and out of the team. Like, is it Madueke the starter? Is it Jadon Sancho the starter? You don't know. When you spend 60 million, you need to make it work, basically, because that's a 60 million that you need to work. Like, with Kai Havertz at Arsenal, Arteta tried to make it work, playing him in the midfield, playing him up top, and at the end, he gave them 14 goals in one season. So you can say that it might have worked better than Neto. It's 65 million that might work. For Chelsea, to be honest, Chelsea should be challenging for the title next season right away, on paper, with that much money spent. And the project has been here for 4 years next season. You should be challenging for the title. It's not about... Maresca has not started the project because Caicedo and Enzo were not brought in for Maresca. Colwell was not brought in for Maresca. Cucurella was not brought in. So the project started before Enzo Maresca. Enzo Maresca is just a choice, right? If you think that Chelsea will not challenge next season, so basically the project is failing. That's it. It's failing. If you play Conference League again next season, or you even play Europa League, you're failing. The project is not working. Especially when you're bringing... Who's the guy you signed like in February? The here we go that we got from Fabrizio Romano. What's his name? From Portugal or something?
That says it
Oh
all.
no, Yusago and Quenda. No?
Quenda.
Can I ask you something? Have you ever heard of these guys before Chelsea signed them? You knew about them.
One of them played against Manchester City in the Champions League. I've watched him. But he's the winger that we signed from Sporting Lisbon.
Are they young?
He was playing under Amorim. He's got
he's 17, isn't he? He was 17. United wanted him because Amorim wanted him. But he's a wing-back. He played as a wing-back for Sporting. Amorim wanted him as a wing-back. But Chelsea promised him he could be a winger, which again just doesn't make sense based on the amount of wingers that they've got.
Everyone I've spoke to who'd done their scouting work for Chelsea, right? Everyone that I've spoke to seems to think that was always what he wanted to be. He wants to be a touchline winger, right, in this Maresca system, which, I mean, look, that's what people are saying. I don't know. There's a talented player there. I think he's definitely more focused on attack from what I've seen than defensiveness, but he's 17. We can't be putting all our eggs into a basket filled of 17-year-olds with Esteval arriving and Kendry Paez. It just isn't going to work in relation to winning trophies. I think personally, what Clearlake and Blueco are yet to realise is the correlation between success on the pitch and increased revenue in terms of player valuations. I think they're yet to realise that yet, because I think they sort of blindly underestimated that off the back of finishing 12th. They believe that those players were still worth money, but I don't think they realised that they were probably judged on things before they got to the club. And I think they've just maybe I'm speaking for them, but I don't know. But that's kind of how I look at it. I just don't think they've kind of got to grips with how important success is in terms of the valuation of what players can be worth.
I also just think I think they just generally assume that young players go up in value almost no matter what. And I think there's going to be a hard reality that if they have too many wingers for everyone to play, right? So if someone like Akwenda is getting Europa League football here and there and is in a team that is ultimately not competing for titles, he's not going to go for more than, how much do you pay for him? Like 60 mil or something?
Yeah, I think that I heard quotes of up to like 70 million if he ticks like every box on the package. I think that's the thing, Rory, isn't it? Is that it's not like we're buying these young players at the price Brighton are paying for them. We're paying the fee that Brighton would sell them for before they've even walked through the door to us. So, yeah, I completely agree with you.
It's kind of what United have done for years. United haven't done it with youngsters. They've done it with established players, or not the same. They've not done it with 17, 18-year-olds. They've done it more with like 21, 22-year-olds.
Like Maguire. They signed Maguire.
Maguire or Rasmus Højlund. Yeah. But again, they've signed those players for what you'd assume they would eventually be worth, rather than, even with Lenny Yoro, I think they've done that. But with Chelsea, it almost feels like an even bigger gamble because it's players that haven't even had one good season in a major league.
I think we touched on it before as well. With Chelsea, the biggest issue is, in terms of these players, is if they're not achieving Champions League football and they're not meeting the level that the club has as a reputation, they'll always be deemed as underachieving. Whereas if you come into Brighton and you get Europa League football or Conference League football, you'll be deemed as overachieving and probably able to perform at a better level. So I think for that reason, their value probably skyrockets and increases quicker than if you perform well at Chelsea. I think someone like Cole Palmer probably is a little bit of an exception to the rule, but I can tell you right now, with how it's been for him this season, his value probably dropped a lot quicker than what it would have if a player was having a bit of a blip at Brighton, for example.
Yeah.
I was said something by Don now that is saying that Chelsea have missed more big chances than any other team in the Premier League. My counter to this is last season, Chelsea were the second in big chances missed as well. And people were not satisfied. Because football is not only about missing chances, it's about the overall game, it's about the defense. Arsenal are second in the league and they don't create a lot of chances, but it's a second. It's a second in the league. You don't have to create abundance of chances to actually be a competitive team. You can create one or two chances and still be competitive if your defense is sound, if your midfield is sound, if your fullbacks are in the right place and you're preventing the opposition. That is my point. Like, yes, you make a lot of chances, but it's not only about that. It's about your midfield being open. It's about the defense being open. It's about the overlaps and where do you create these chances? That is my point. I'm like, bro, it is not an indication of how good the football was because we all watch it and I don't think it has been good. Yesterday against Ipswich, just not good. You could have been 3-0 down in the first half. If that bin that the guy had an open shot outside the 18, you could have been 3-0 down.
We also could have been in the lead, though, Mo, had we taken our chances earlier on in that game. We failed to do so. I mean, Jackson hit the post, didn't he? And there was a couple of opportunities where Chelsea probably had the momentum, and had they had a little bit more incisiveness, been a little bit more clinical in front of goal, they may have been in the lead. And I think that's where it comes down to the quality of player.
But you shouldn't have to be scoring 3 goals to beat an Ipswich Town. Scoring 2 goals against Ipswich Town, that should be enough to win, and that's the problem.
1 point out of 6 against Ipswich this season.
Yeah, so. And the problem is, Don will sit there and say that Chelsea's midfield's better than Arsenal's midfield, and that X, Y, and Z defenders are better than X, Y, and Z Arsenal defenders. I'm just using Arsenal as an example because I know he's done that. They'll sit there and do that, and then go, well, yeah, but look at all the big chances we're missing. And it's like, well, yeah, but you conceded twice to an Ipswich Town team that had none of their 3 top scorers this season at home. Like, it's not good enough, plain and simply.
Yeah, it is not good enough for Chelsea. And I'm not sure if Chelsea will get back to the top soon enough. We'll see. If Chelsea sack Maresca and get a top manager, Chelsea might play well next season and be challenging or be hard on the table. If Chelsea stay with Maresca, And it
problem they've
looks
got with that is that top managers. I mean, Hansi Flick is the best example. Like, they don't want to go to Chelsea. You're restricted with who you could. Well, you're massively restricted with what you actually want to do yourself in terms of who you recruit. You're lumbered with a lot of players straight off the bat that aren't good enough, but you've got to try and figure out what to do with them. I just think, you know, there are very few reasons a big manager would want to go to Chelsea right now.
I think
why
any
would a
big
big
manager
manager
would look
want
at-
to? Sorry, can I add a point to Rory before you respond? Why would a big manager go to a club that is the big three signings they already had are 17 and 18 years old? Like Estivao, Quenda, and the other guy, I don't know what his name is.
Do you know who did that though? I think Luis
Benny
Enrique
Perez.
probably did do that. He went to a PSG side that he knew were going to be shifting into a different dynamic. They were going to recruit young. They were going to go exciting. They were going to go with the best young talent in Europe. I think they got a very similar model to Chelsea actually, with the signings of Barcola, Desiree Doué, João Neves in midfield. They've got the young centre back playing for them at the moment. They've got, obviously they signed and paid big money for Nuno Mendes when he was a little bit younger. I think they were shifting the direction of that club into a similar sort of transition to Chelsea. But I think ultimately he knew that he'd have slightly more control over the situation, probably be having his footballing opinion respected rather than disregarded, because it didn't fit with the business plan. And I think that
I also think there was less
how they've been this season. Go on, Rory.
I also think there was less pressure because he'd have still known coming into it that he'd dominate the league. So then it all comes down to the Champions League as normal. But then he probably knew that even in the Champions League, there wasn't going to be a huge amount of pressure because of everyone was aware that there was this kind of change and that they'd lost.
He would have had
Mbappe
2 seasons.
whereas I think with Chelsea, it's like there is almost an assumption that Chelsea should be competing for the Champions League, but it's like it's a very difficult job to come in and do it. But the pressure is constantly there, and I just think, like you said, and Enrique probably knew that he'd still have budget to spend on players that he wanted. Whereas, you know, if you're coming in now and you're saying, right, I want this winger and this winger, and the club are going, well, yeah, but we've got Neto that we paid 60 million for, Mudryk we paid 80 million for, Sancho we've just spent another 25 million on if you do it, Madueke, we've got two wingers both coming in that are teenagers. It's like you're not allowed to buy a winger, so you do, and you're I just think
also the young that you talk about, Dan, is different. Kvaratskhelia might be young, but he won a league title already with Napoli.
Yeah,
Like,
but I
Vitinha,
think that's
Xavi
a
and
similar sign into like Pedro Neto's level. We're talking about similar fee. I'm not saying Pedro Neto's at the ability of Kvara and has won what he's won, but Pedro Neto was a signing that I think could have happened instead of Kvara. Like, you're spending the same amount of money on that player.
Yeah.
Why could you not have picked up the phone and had that? Obviously, he probably didn't want to come, but you could have had that conversation. I mean, there were strong links at a time, I think, during the summer when we were looking for a winger.
Yes.
There was pictures of him being sent around in a Chelsea shirt. There was like that sort of discussion. I can't remember if that was January or the summer, but they're the sort of players that you could have got for the same amount of money that was spent on Pedro Neto and Mudryk.
Yeah, but
I hear you.
Whilst you could have got Kvara, which I don't think you could have anyway, but Luis Enrique wouldn't have signed Pedro Neto for 60 million if he couldn't get Kvaratskhelia. I think that's
I agree. I completely agree with that. Yeah.
So he still ended up with one of the best wingers in Europe, and you didn't.
But I think Chelsea identified Pedro Neto potentially as one of the best young talents in Europe. And I think that's a huge problem, is I think Chelsea have identified players thinking that they're this good and they haven't been able to make the jump. Like Jamie said, he's come in, you're expecting him to step up a gear, and he just looks the same as the player we all saw at Wolves the season before.
I think actually Dijk there has made a great point, though, that Kvara's on like 300k a week at PSG. The issue now with your model is that no one gets big wages. So again, how are you going to convince one of the genuine better players in Europe to go to
come and make
Chelsea?
100k?
Well, we saw that with Osimhen, didn't we, in the summer?
Exactly.
They're trying to make it up in bonuses. I would think Cole Palmer was earning, at one point last season, was earning a lot of money post signing that new contract earlier on in this season as well. I think he would have been taking home a very, very sizable paycheck because of the bonuses being structured around performance. But I mean, look, these footballers don't know that their performance, they don't know that it's guaranteed, right? And I think it's easier to go and sign a guaranteed salary than it is to take it on bonuses and hope that you perform.
Yeah.
Especially with the manager being volatile.
Let me do this. Give Maresca, Messi, and Cristiano Ronaldo a form. He kills them. Maybe JJ.
Messi doing left central midfield shifts.
O'Malley saying, will Chelsea push to win the Club World Cup? It will be a short preseason for them. If so, and transfer spending may be dependent on it if they don't get UEFA Champions League. It's a very fair point. If Chelsea
They may as
win the
well
Club
push
World
to
Cup,
win it.
If they're in
Sorry,
it, yeah.
Ron. They may as well push to win it because the difference, they're going to get out of the group. So, and if you get out of the group, it's not that much time-wise. It's only a couple of weeks difference between getting out the first, whatever it is, the quarterfinals or round of 16, and then making the final. So once you've got out of it, it's for an extra 30, 40 million quid. You may as well.
I think, what are you saying, Jamie?
I'm thinking about it now, like a bit more and more. Like, I think we're naturally starting to see kind of the breakdown of the traditional big six in England. I think there's a lot of things stemming from it, and I think this Chelsea, like United, Spurs situation, like naturally they're obviously going to have the biggest commercial revenues because of the success that they've had in previous seasons. Maybe not Spurs, but like in terms of just like the big six. But now we're kind of seeing a shift of, because of, you can't just go out and if you make a mistake in the transfer window, if you make a mistake in like another part of the business model that you're implementing, you can't just go out and fix it by buying a better player. You have to resolve that issue, and that sometimes takes a little bit more time. And with the way the likes of Brighton, Newcastle, Forest, the way they're running their clubs at the minute in terms of buying and selling players, even Newcastle, they couldn't buy anyone for a certain amount of period of time, so they didn't sell anyone. They just kind of kept their core group, worked on them, made sure that they were fitting into their model, and now they're obviously seeing the benefits of it. Big teams like Chelsea, like United, they're finding that they can't actually go into the market now and replace the mistakes that they've made. And I think the other clubs around them are figuring out, they're a little bit more nimble, I would say, because of the structure that they have. They don't have the say pressure that maybe a Chelsea would come under, that United would come under, because they're not at the same level, but they're finding ways to navigate up the Premier League. And even if you look at like across Europe, because of the way the Premier League model it works in terms of the revenue that they generate, like players that are in Italy, France, Spain, Germany, they'll look at like teams in like say Newcastle, Forest, Villa, and they'll say, I can go to there, potentially get Europa League, Champions League, and be on massive wages. And that means the quality of their teams is starting to increase. So I think now it's like big teams make mistakes. Other good players are still going to these other teams, and they're basically pushing them to, if you keep on making mistakes, you're just going to continue to go down the league. So yeah, it's a kind of accumulation of a lot of things now. And I think Chelsea, United, Spurs are going to find it very difficult to get back into that mix because of how well the other teams are doing.
I was actually going to ask this question, would we ever see the top six, traditional top six again, all of the top again, ever in the near future?
Not for the consistency that we did before. I was actually looking back through it to see how often teams had big six teams had really dropped away. And there were so many, especially from like 2010 to 2020, there were so many seasons where the top six was the big six, or maybe one of them would drop out. I don't think there's ever been, since the kind of established big six, I don't think there's ever been a season where only two of that big six were even in the top four. And this season that could very easily happen with Forest and Newcastle getting into it. And I think COVID had a big effect. I think basically the Premier League survived COVID so much better than every other European league because of like the global brand. And you look at the way that Premier League clubs have kicked on since COVID relative to teams in Europe. And we are at the point, like you say now, where mid to lower league Premier League clubs can attract top managers from Europe. They can attract good players from Europe. And I do think, to an extent, like Arsenal and Liverpool are kind of lucky. You look back at some of the teams that we fielded, but we were still able to keep ourselves as like big six or top six, top four. I just don't think you'd get away with that now because the general level of the Premier League has improved so much. And so, yeah, I think I struggle to see it going back to that sort of dominance of the big six teams.
Yeah, well, I actually think that Newcastle will be in the fold no matter what. I think Newcastle within the next 2-3 years will be one of the big clubs in England and they will challenge for trophies. I'm not sure about Forest, but I'm sure that Newcastle will be. I think Aston Villa will actually, if they fix their financial issues this summer, I think they will be there and thereabout. They might not win the league, I think Newcastle have a bigger chance of winning the league in the near future than Newcastle. And I just think teams will need to be fighting against Newcastle and the likes of Villas and these teams. And it's not going to be only fighting against Liverpool and Arsenal and City. It will be, oh, by the way, every time you go to St. James's Park, you're an inferior team. No matter who you are, you're an inferior team because Newcastle is just strong. They are building a team that is capable of competing. And if they add a couple of players to the starting 11 and they add some depth, with the likes of Livramento, Lewis Hall, with the likes of Gordon, Isak, Guimaraes, Joe Linton, I think this team can challenge. Just need a couple. Newcastle need less players to challenge than Chelsea Football Club.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Can I give you a more wild statement? Forget the manager, because Pep Guardiola is not going to stay here forever. Newcastle need less player in the starting 11 to challenge the Manchester City.
No.
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 With Guardiola next season.
The winger, exactly. That's the factor. It's Guardiola.
Wingers?
Right? You have Savinho and Doku.
And
The other ones have Gordon, Barnes, Jacob Murphy. They need
Barnes
one
and Jacob
winger.
Murphy are not. Barnes and Jacob Murphy aren't better than Doku
Depth.
and
It can be
Samuel.
depth.
No, I think
Harvey Barnes is outputting a goal better than Anthony Gordon at the moment. It's like pretty good.
Rodri will be
numbers,
coming
isn't
back
it?
in. Like, you can't take away from the fact, like, he's the Ballon d'Or winner last
No,
season.
they got Erling
I mean,
Haaland. They got Erling Haaland up top. All right,
It's just
Isak.
com-
Would you rather
like
have Erling
everybody
Haaland
else.
or Isak? Erling Haaland or Isak?
But then would I rather go from Isak to Callum Wilson or Haaland to Mamish?
But that's why I said in the starting 11, in the depth part, they will need to get more depth to be able to compete. By the way, Liverpool didn't use a lot of depth this season, right? It proves that if you keep your team fit, you can literally play the majority of the games with like 13 players, 14 players at max, right? Liverpool did not use a lot of their depth. You need your depth to go challenge for all the competitions, right? If the players at Newcastle, if the three midfielders are fit, and they add one midfielder as depth, along with Willock and along with Longstaff as depth for the cup games, I think Newcastle can do it. In the defense, the problem is Botman is injured all the time, so they need defenders.
They need to keep.
They need the goalkeeper. The right backs and the left backs are sorted with Lewis Hall and Livramento, in my opinion. Right?
One thing as well, though, Mo, you have to take into account is mentality. Like, Newcastle's mentality to win in the league wouldn't be in comparison to like Man City's. Do you know what I mean? If they're going toe to toe, I just think, I think Man City, they're going to have Rodri back. Haaland be fit next season. They're going to bring in, I'd say if they brought in 2 or 3 world-class players, which they could easily do, they'll be like 90-plus points again.
Favorites.
Yeah,
we'll see. I think we'll see. I want to go to, so this is actually a very, very good segue to the point that I was speaking to Igal about it right before the show about the challenge next season. I had this thing about Arsenal have went backwards that Gary Neville presented on NBC. Robbie Mustoe has dismantled him with the injuries and all the stuff that happened. Igal, for example, told me something that he believes that if Arsenal go next season and they get the people that they're linked to, he thinks that Arsenal will be favorites. My response to that was Liverpool now renewing Salah and Van Dijk. Liverpool also, in their normal case scenario, will sign a striker, they will sign a defender, right? A midfielder. It will be Liverpool again favorites next season. Does anybody think that Arsenal will be favorites next season if they sign a Gyökeres as Aubameyang and a left winger?
I'm like 33.
Yeah, I think there are too many ifs because you just don't know what Arsenal or Liverpool are going to do in the transfer market. I think a big if would be what happens to Arsenal in the Champions League. So major if we somehow won it, I think people will be going, okay, well the ceiling of Arsenal's team is clearly arguably the best in Europe. Injuries have hit them. Yeah, I just think it's too much. Like you said, I think it'll be very close. I also think you have to just not write off Man City. So, yeah, I don't know.
For some whatever reason, I'm not thinking about Man City at all.
But if Man City,
foolish.
I'm trying to think since Guardiola's been there, have they ever went 2 seasons without winning the league? Like
Nah.
They haven't, have they? I think
He
it
won,
was
he
there
won
9
6
years.
out of 8.
Yeah, 6 out of 8. So Liverpool broke it.
Sorry. 6 out of 9. So he lost the league to
Was
Conte, Arne Slot, and Jurgen Klopp. So
Did he win
6
it in his
leagues
second
out of
season?
9.
Yeah.
Second.
Was it second? And then what year was that? trying to think now.
18.
16, 17, he won it, he
Yeah.
lost it. And then 17, 18, he won it.
And then, and 18,
And then
19.
he won it again. And then 19, 20,
Then he lost
Liverpool
it.
won it. And then he
Liverpool.
won 4 in a row. And then this year he will lose it to Arne Slot.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for something to happen is something that hasn't happened in Guardiola's time. Do you know what I mean? For him to
It could.
not win a
I
league.
think this is the most likely that it could happen, though. Do
Yeah.
you agree with that? Like, if
Yeah.
they were
so.
to not win it next season, I don't think we'd be shocked after what we've seen this season.
I also
I
think,
think
they'll thrive under not having the pressure almost.
True.
I feel
Yeah.
like if they can
I
sit
think-
there and people talking about Arsenal, Liverpool going into the season, they'll thrive on that.
If Arsenal, like Rory says, if Arsenal did the unthinkable, but I think like they have a good chance as anyone going on now and winning it. Like I think the confidence I get from that Madrid game, and I know we'll probably come on to it now in a little bit about what might happen in the Bernabeu, but if Arsenal did go on to win the Champions League, similar to like what you're saying about City, it takes the monkey off their back where like they go into next season saying, well, we've won the Champions League, why can't we go on and win the Premier League?
It's
Do you know
what
I mean?
you did. It's what you did, isn't it? Win the Champions League first and then do the league.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we had 97 points. We should have won it the
Yeah.
year as well. But no, yeah, especially I think when Klopp actually first came in, he lost. I think it was he was 6 consecutive finals, including Dortmund, where like he didn't win, and he was kind of getting labelled as like someone that like couldn't get it over the line, even though he had won like 2 leagues and a couple of cups in Dortmund. But like he was getting that label where like he couldn't win it in finals. And then, when he won the Champions League, kind of just everyone forgot about it. And then he obviously went on to win a lot of trophies with Liverpool. But yeah, I think if Arsenal win the Champions League this season, which they're definitely going to be in the halfer, then I think that takes the monkey off their back as well. And I think you would, if they went on
Do
and
we
signed
think
someone
Arsenal
else,
will win the Champions League then, Jamie?
I'd still...
Number one, okay,
Mm.
before we go there, do you think
Yeah.
Arsenal will go past Madrid?
Yeah, I
This
think
is
they'll
the
go past-
rational league,
I think,
please.
Yeah, rational league. I think they'll go past Madrid. I think there will be. I'm not saying they're gonna like lose, but I think Madrid will give it their best, especially the first half. And if they get an early goal, maybe the atmosphere might change. I think we'll see. But I think it's too much of an ask for Madrid to go through. But I think I don't think they'll win the Champions League. I think someone else will. Not Inter Milan anyway.
We're definitely the favorites to win the Champions League. Not a shadow of a doubt. We're the best team equipped to win the Champions League. This is
That's-
another triple season for Inter.
I think
We're here for it.
but you know what? I
Still
think
think
of Barca. I think of Barca, but then I look at PSG and I just think PSG probably have everything in attack that Barca would in a certain aspect of how they play. But I think defensively they're a little bit better.
They don't have
Um,
Lewandowski, though, do they? They don't have a Lewandowski type player.
No, but I don't know. Like I just think I think if Barca and PSG came up against each other in the final, that'd be a
How
very
good would that be?
tactical game.
Yeah.
Like Luis
You know
Enrique
what?
against
You know
his
what?
former
The
team.
fantastic. I was in a space with Con, Nima, and all these guys on Twitter, and someone said that from a football perspective, who would you rather have in the final if you're a neutral? PSG Barcelona or Inter Arsenal? Or you would rather see PSG Inter? Like, which combination you think is best for football to have in the final?
Arsenal,
Rem-
PSG.
I think Arsenal, Barca.
I don't know. I feel like the Arsenal will potentially be. I don't know actually, because I think Arteta surprised me with Real Madrid. Actually, how he approached it. So maybe not. Maybe Rory's right. It could actually be exciting, but I just think right now there's a sort of excitement that comes with
In
watching
terms of like,
PSG and
yeah, I
Barca.
think in terms of just like an entertaining game, you might get better with PSG Barca, but I think the amount of hype around
Tell you
just
what, El
Arsenal
Clasico is a
being in the
shout, by the
final.
way, to be fair, if that
I
was
guess that
to
could still
happen,
happen,
that
but-
would be a good shout.
Insanely, that's never happened, has it? But
Yeah, I know, right? That would be good.
For me, I think it's Inter Arsenal for one reason. Right? I'm going to tell you why. I'm going to explain to you why.
the worst.
So I
game.
think both managers are tactically very adaptable, and I'm so
0-0.
intrigued to see how they're going to approach the game, both of them.
But we saw it
Well-
already this season. It was an awful game, and you won it with a UEFA handball. Otherwise, it would have been a 0-0.
I think it
was
will
an
be
awful
different.
game.
I think it will be different this time. From tactical point of view, I like to see that. Like from an entertainment point of view, PSG Barcelona for sure. I want to see open game, players running at defenders, dribbling, and all this stuff. But I'm actually not about that life. I supported Italy. Remember, in 1994, there was Romario, Bebeto, and I chose to support Italy in '94 in the World Cup. So I'm more of a tactical person when it comes to football. I like to see a tactical game. Entertainment is for five-a-side and futsal. in 11-11. I like to see tactical battles and stuff like that. But
content-wise, you want Arsenal Barca.
Oh, could you imagine?
content-wise, I want
The
Inter
numbers.
Barca.
Could you
because-
imagine the hate watches?
Because Terry
on
Flowers
that-
will
on
fly
the
me to
Champions
England to do a
final
watch along in the studio. He said that live. I would be flown to England to do a watch along in the studio, right?
Wow.
day. Twitter would be shaking in its boots if Arsenal were in a Champions League final. They'd be like, they would go to meltdown if they won.
I actually think if Arsenal win the Champions League, I think the internet will just explode. If Arsenal, especially if they win it
Cease
against
to exist.
Barcelona, bro. If
Yeah,
Arsenal
if-
win it against Barcelona, I think that would be crazy.
If we beat Real Madrid and Barca are on the way to doing it.
Yeah. If you beat Real Madrid, PSG, and Barca, they're like fully deserved to win it.
Yeah. We can dream. We can dream.
By the way, I'm just gonna say
Enjoy the football.
everyone in the semi-final are deserved to win it. By the way, once you reach the
Yeah.
semi-final, you deserve to win the competition at this time, right? Especially none of the teams have faced like easy. Even Inter, we faced Bayern Munich, right? Like it's not an easy team. They're winning the league.
Barca a little bit.
Barca haven't faced a lot of teams. Like they're playing Dortmund. Literally, Dortmund are just naive. The most naive team in the history of the sport. Opening up against Barcelona in the Camp Nou is something that you never heard of in your life. But still, Barcelona play good football. I like Yamal. I like Hansi Flick a lot. He plays
Pedri.
counter-attack.
I think that guy is so good and not spoken about enough. He's
You know
brilliant.
what?
Who?
You know what?
Pedri.
Oh,
I
yeah.
hate Barcelona the most,
good.
along with Juventus. But I love Pedri. Watching Pedri play football is just an entertaining thing to watch. He's so underrated. Like people don't talk about him as much as they talk about Neves or, like Vitinha. But I think he's on par with these people, if not even better than them.
Yeah.
I think actually Lamine Yamal is phenomenal as a football player. Lewandowski is one of the best strikers I've watched.
Yeah.
And Hansi Flick is freaking amazing, to be honest, as a coach.
One of my
He's
mates has I was chatting to him there recently. He's a season ticket for Barcelona, and I was asking him about like what's his favorite things. He's obviously going to them week in, week out. And I was expecting him to say like Rafinha or your man. He was like Pedri. He's ridiculous. He's like he's my favorite player to watch. He's like, I was saying like who would you compare him to or whatever, and he was like he's like a mix between like Busquets and Iniesta in terms of like the way like he just plays football. He sees everything before like everything is just in front of him. And he's just saying, like this season, he obviously had a lot of injury issues during the Euros. He was disappointed with how things went, and then when he came back, but this season he's had his best injury-free season, and he's just playing to like his best of his ability. He's only 22 as well. Like I feel like he's been around for ages, but like he's going to be in that team for the next 10 years. And,
I think his injury at the Euros sort of like all the players that excel for Spain in the Euros, his injury obviously took him out of the competition really early on. And I think that kind of killed the hype around Pedri is because he wasn't there when so many people were watching Spain. And I think this season it's kind of gone under the radar a bit from people, unless people have like really watched Barcelona. But he's the exact product I'd expect that you'd get of a kid that studied Xavi, Iniesta, and Busquets, that midfield. I think he has a bit of everything in his game. And I think at times he's almost been like a one-man band in that Barcelona midfield with doing a bit of everything that they did. He's a fantastic player. Not to say
the problem is I can't live in a world where Barcelona win the Champions League. I just can't live in that world. Like
you've lived
I just can't.
Wait, what?
Dominate
Arsenal win the Champions League.
No. I
can't
listen. I don't think Barcelona won. I don't think Barcelona won the Champions League. Ronaldinho won the Champions League and Messi won the Champions League. Barcelona, the football club, didn't win the Champions League, in my opinion. It's just Messi won the Champions League.
They won it before,
which is
they won it with like
once. Once it's something I didn't see it.
No, they won it 3 times in my lifetime. They won it in 09, 11, and then MSN.
Enrique as well, yeah.
15, 16, was it?
So basically, Ronaldinho won 2006, Messi.
06 as well.
2012 and 09, and the MSN won 15. It's not Barcelona as like it's Messi basically.
I don't know. So that one in 06 actually is Barcelona.
Ronaldinho. Have you watched Ronaldinho?
Who did they beat then?
Wasn't it Henrik Larsson?
They beat Milan. Huh?
Wasn't it Henrik Larsson that come on and changed the game?
Yeah, but Ronaldinho was ridiculous.
But I think were Arsenal not down to 10 men?
Yes. Lehmann got sent off.
We have Manuel Almunia in goal. So
and Arsenal weren't winning. Barcelona weren't winning.
No,
They
and you
brought on
know,
Henry
guys,
Larsson.
that
We
They
it
scored
is
like
winning.
2
said-
goals in the last 15 minutes.
You know,
Yeah,
it
we
is
were
said
winning
that
with
both
12 minutes to go.
Eto goal was offside.
Who was the other
Yeah.
goal?
That is
Belletti?
Belletti scored from an
Yeah.
Eto
Yeah.
pass.
I was about to say Zabrata.
And then we know how they won it in 2009 with the scam against Chelsea and the worst game I've watched in football. That Chelsea should have won, and Barcelona won to reach the final. But anyway, that's a
2011
different
they
story.
deserve
By the way, 06 is why we need another Arsenal Barcelona final as well
Oh yeah,
for redemption.
justice.
Do you know
Yeah.
what? I think I would have been able to cope with the 06 Arsenal team winning that Champions League more than I would cope with the Arsenal team currently. I feel like you had so many legends and like top players in that side then compared to
Yeah.
what you do now. I just feel like Henry winning it with Arsenal would have been fitting. Obviously, a young Cesc was in that team.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a
Also
young
at that
Saka
time, Dan, you were
winning
not
it
as.
for Arsenal.
Also at that time, Chelsea were not as now. Like you only
We had
won
2 Prems.
2 league titles by then. You know what I mean? You haven't won the Champions
do you know
League.
what
You
it was?
haven't won
It was-
Europa
I
League
think-
yet.
I think it
So
was
for me,
Henry.
like
I
there was
think it
no
was Henry.
world where
It
you
was
can
just on-
compare both clips.
Growing up, like Henry was the guy from the Premier League, wasn't it? It was always Henry Van Nistelrooy as like the battle for me growing up. And then I think Henry was that guy. I couldn't believe when he left to go to Barcelona. I was so shocked that he was leaving the Prem as like a young
I think
kid.
Arsenal were on the decline a little bit, and he was like, "I want to go and win a Champions League."
Problem was, we knew everyone at the club knew that we weren't giving out proper contracts to players, so everyone just started fleeing. But are you telling me it would not be iconic if Mikel Merino as a striker won the Champions League? That would be iconic. That would
Hopefully
be
Havertz is
iconic.
back, so he's won one, so you could just say, well, Havertz already won one. The experience guy.
We're like waxing
Imagine-
lyrical about all these unbelievable
Imagine if
players.
Havertz is back for the final.
He might be.
And-
They're floating the idea he might make it back
Yeah,
right at the end of the
Brazil.
season. Imagine Havertz
Wow.
off the bench for another Champions League winner.
no
But
stranger to
then
Champions League
Then
final.
you'd have to accept that Kai Havertz is a 2 times Champions League winner with 2 different clubs, potentially 2 Champions League winning goals. That starts putting him in the all-time.
But I want to
ranks.
go back to the Real Madrid game. Is Thomas Partey injured though?
I doubt it.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
it, what
I think we
was
all know
the
what
press
that's
conference? He
for.
like smirked, and he's like, "Yeah, he's injured."
No, sorry, I wasn't playing into that. I think he'll be
Oh.
there. I think he'll play.
Oh,
I
really?
think- I think
Oh,
he'll
He'll
okay.
play. Wow.
Bro, this whole like he can't go to Spain. He played in Girona in January. So I don't really. And I know
Where is
some people have
Girona
said that-
based in Spain?
Some people, I don't really know. Some people have said that there's different laws in like Catalonia to the rest of Spain, but from what I can tell, they're like civil laws, not criminal. To be honest, I don't know, but I just think he'll play. I think it was mind games. I think he went off because he was knackered. After the game, he was fine. Like when a player goes off, when a player knows that they're injured and they go off right before a big game, like we saw with Gabriel, they're gutted and they know it's whereas he was smiling and stuff. So yeah, I don't know. Obviously I know the stuff that's going on.
I want to go to the Real Madrid game and see what the people are saying about the Real Madrid game. Guys, 500 people in the house and we're not even on 200 likes. The like button is underneath the live chat. Let's get the likes up, people, a little bit to 200. It's a shame that we only have 120 likes. Like button helps the channel, helps the video go to more viewers. So hit that like button if you like the content. Of course, about the Real Madrid game, is there any chance Real Madrid can come back?
There's a
Yes.
chance.
There's always a chance.
History
Always a
suggests that's the thing, isn't it? With this,
Yeah.
Well, I disagree with that. to be
Really?
honest.
I want to hear it. To be fair,
So, because don't get me wrong, in individual games they have turned it around. The only time they've ever come back from three goals down in a first leg was against Derby County in 1975. So this whole
that is an unreal stat, Paul. To be fair,
only because I actually saw a Madrid page lie because they also did it against Anderlecht in 1984 and Borussia Mönchengladbach in 1985. But both of those were UEFA Cup, so like Europa League. So they've done it once, and it was 50 years ago. And I just don't think that they are like the Real Madrid that have made those comebacks as well. I just don't quite think this team is that. And when they have done it, I don't think they've done it against teams that are foundationally as solid as Arsenal are defensively. So, like I said, it is possible, but it's not likely.
Is it 5%?
I think don't concede early. Like that's the one thing you don't want to do. You don't want to get the momentum up. Like because the thing is with Madrid as well, Madrid fans will like if they get any sniff of like a chance, then like the atmosphere and like the heritage of Madrid, that'll just start like weighing in. And even on Arsenal's like players, like they'll be like, oh my god, is this like a Madrid
This
thing
is
that's
what
going
it
to happen
feels
again?
like.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's obviously, I think you're right, Rory. It hasn't happened before. They haven't done that. I think there's only been like I think it's like happened 6 times where like a team's overturned that deficit, but it has seemed to happen a lot recently in like the last kind of number of years. Not like say like last decade, it's happened like 4 times out of 6 or something.
Barca PSG, is that
Barca,
like the game?
Barca
Yeah.
PSG, I think Barca Roma,
Liverpool,
I think it
Barca.
was Liverpool
yeah.
Barca, and then there was one more, I think. But-
Liverpool.
yeah, Liverpool Barca, but then there was one more, I think. But
Did Chelsea not do it? Did Chelsea not go and get 3 at the Bernabeu? Did we
yeah,
not?
but there was
Yeah.
they got it back to
And then
3-3.
we didn't win it, but we went and
Yeah.
scored 3, and then they got 1.
But yeah, don't concede early. Just go out, have a solid first half. Let take all the air out of the stadium, and then just go and like your 3
I think
goals.
Arsenal will win the game.
I think it's
Like-
more likely that we win the game than that we lose the tie.
I said that. I actually think that Arsenal can go to the Bernabeu and actually win the game. Like just not the tie. The way that Real Madrid are set up now, the way they are rattled, the way they are 3-0 down, the way they're going to attack with everyone, they're going to leave a lot of spaces for the likes of Saka against their defense. Declan Rice, as we have seen, he can drive with the ball. And I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Arsenal come back with a 2-1 and then it's 5-1 on aggregate. And who's talking now?
I feel like Madrid are rattled
heritage.
as well, aren't they? That
Yeah.
Mbappe red card was horrific. Like his
Right, that
head
Mbappe-
would be so gone.
That honestly, that was like you don't see challenges like that
No.
anymore. That was like Keen on Alfie Haaland level of like I really
Intent,
want
yeah.
to hurt you. It was bizarre, absolutely bizarre. But yeah, I think they're rattled, and I almost think they're putting a bit too much on this comeback thing. Like all of them are posting on social media about Wednesday. There's so much PR is being churned out about how they're ready for Wednesday and they're closing the roof and all of this stuff.
Yeah,
And I
did
feel
you
like
see rice cooks better with a lid on it?
yeah.
That's
And I feel like there's so much of this like swelling kind of balloon. If
But they
Arsenal
play into
score
that.
early, they're playing into it. But if Arsenal
Yeah.
score early on, that balloon is just gonna burst.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose the more like the pressure's not really like obviously Madrid will want to go through, but the pressure's not on them in a sense. Like they kind of get a free whack of it because obviously Arsenal have the goals. Like if they build it up, and they get an early goal, then it's like, oh, we could be in trouble here. Do you know what I mean? So I think it is like I think Madrid is just like it's a Hollywood
the first
club.
20 minutes is the most important of the fixture.
Yeah.
It's Madrid or Hollywood
Well,
club. Do you know what I mean? They'll play up to like it's like a theater there. Do you know what I mean? They'll play up to it.
You
and be
guys
like,
think
right,
that Arsenal will
what could happen?
attack and Arteta will surprise us, or he's gonna approach the game differently? Because all of us assume that Arsenal will defend at the Emirates a little bit.
I don't think he needs to
didn't.
change his game plan. He's just go out and do what he's continued to do. Do you know what I mean? I think the thing is now with Arsenal is, and I've said this a few times on the show, like they have Saka back. Like when you have Saka back, he offers so much threat going forward that like you could have him up there on his own, and Madrid will still be like self-consciously thinking, right, we can't leave him there because he's going to do damage.
I think
The
they'll
thing is
smell
that-
blood if you sit back as well. I think you've
Yeah.
got to go and attack them, and then they'll think, "Oh, this isn't going to be as easy as we thought."
The thing is, other than the second half against City away where we were down to 10 men and we genuinely did just camp outside our box, it's just not the way. And people almost have a misconception that we do it a lot where we go and like defend. But if you actually look at the way we play, we suck the life out of games.
Yeah.
But that's a good thing to be able to do. If first 15 minutes we just suck the life out of the game, keep possession, nothing risky, we don't let Real Madrid really attack us, which is more often than not what we do. Like it's not about sitting on the edge of our box and letting Madrid come at us. It's actually about like we don't even let Madrid into our half really. We defend in the way that we normally do, which is just complete control. And we suck the life out of the game. And I think the more frustrated that Real Madrid get, the more opportunities we'll then have. And that's the thing, like Madrid scoring 3 against us would be impressive anyway, based on how rarely we concede that many goals. But then they'd also have to keep a clean sheet, which based on the way they are defensively, are really, especially without Camavinga. So they're going to probably have to play Modric in midfield again. Like, yeah.
Isn't Tchouaméni back?
Tchouaméni's back, but Camavinga's out. So, and they still don't have Ferland Mendy. So,
it's like that.
Wow.
Do you remember that Barcelona tweet? When Liverpool were playing them in the Champions League final, it's like, we score 1, they need 4. It's like, surely they won't score 4.
yeah. Hopefully not. But no.
I think if Arsenal attack, I think you will leave yourself to chances. And that is what I don't want to see.
But we can attack without being. I think we'll play very similarly to the way we did at home, but we will take out any element of risk. So Miles Lewis-Skelly won't pick up the ball and try and drive towards the box. He'll probably play the simple pass. Thomas Partey probably won't try and break lines with passing. He'll just knock it to Timber. Like, I think we'll take those elements of risk because we don't need to try and score a goal.
Yeah.
But outside of that, I don't really see how they threaten us any more than they did in the first leg.
Rory, what's your biggest loss in a big game that you can that's happened under Arteta?
5-0.
Well, if you go way back to like pre-Saliba days, we lost 5-0.
Yeah,
I think we lost 5-0 to City. But
in the last
3 seasons, then
in the last 3 seasons, the 4-1 away at City at the end of the season, we lost 4-1 to City, and then a couple of weeks later, we lost 3-0 to Brighton. That 3-0 to Brighton, but the season was already over. That 3-0 to Brighton was the last time we lost the game by 3 goals, and that was 700 days ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see Real Madrid actually winning this tie at all. I think there is zero rationale other than Jojo or everything that people talk about the Bernabeu, which is just, it's not going to happen in this game. I don't think it's going to happen. Unless Arsenal get like a red card in the beginning of the game or something like that, helping with the referee, like Arsenal concede a couple of penalties in the beginning. But that is something I can predict. I'm not going to sit here. I'm not going to sit here and analyze the game based on Arsenal getting a red card, for example. You will see Real Madrid will get a penalty and also get a red card. Like, where do you get that?
It's like during
the other thing is
the 5 Champions Leagues, all like the seasons they got.
Red card would just turn it into the same as the second half against City, which wouldn't necessarily be the end of the world, to be honest. But no. I think the mentality shift in a lot of the players as well, or like the development of a lot. Like now, I look at that team and I go, like Raya is solid mentally. Like he's not going to bottle it. Timber massively. Saliba the same. Like Kivior's probably the only one that previously has shown himself to be a bit shaky. Declan Rice, massive like mentality boost. Saka now the confidence he's got. I don't think that you look back to those times where we have lost big games by a lot of goals. Like that City one, for example, you get Rob Holding at centre back, absolutely shitting the bed. We've moved on from that these days.
Exactly. Arsenal have moved on from this shit, to be honest. Arsenal have moved on from this. We'll see. Like, to be honest with you, I think Wednesday will be easier than what people think.
If you do lose, how damaging could that be? Just the rise of Arteta.
I made a video about it after the first leg that I felt like there was kind of a real fork in the road and that we'd gone down the road of like, we know we can beat the best in Europe comfortably and we are that good. And we're not all of these labels that people have tried to throw at us in terms of like bottling the big games, not enough to get over the line. Like, whereas if we somehow lose it at the Bernabeu, I think all of that will come back tenfold on top of us. And also you'll be looking at the season as a whole going, we lost in the quarterfinals just like we did last year. We weren't in a title race really, and we didn't win either of the cups. So, yeah.
I think he might be sacked.
Do you think
he wouldn't be sacked?
I knew you were thinking that, Mo. I saw you smile when I asked
he wouldn't be sacked.
I knew you thought that.
Disastrous.
Do you think he got to a 3-0 lead? I think it might be. I think Berta might look at it. What are you doing here? He's going to turn to the clock and say, we need someone else that's not going to bottle a 3-0 lead.
Rory, do you think Arsenal have to win the Champions League for it to be classed as a successful season? Or like the Arteta bandwagon people, do you know what I mean? Like,
have you gone backwards then? That is the whole point.
No, so that's the thing. I think to be considered a truly successful season, yes. because I think to be a truly successful season at this point with where we are, we need to win something. I think if we get to the semi-finals, I don't think you could argue that we've gone backwards. I think if we lose in the quarterfinals after going 3-0 up, then yeah, I'd say then you feel like you've gone backwards at that point. So,
Do you think Arsenal season has been a success if you not a success? Have you gone forward if you reach a semi-final of the Champions League?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think just by virtue of beating Real Madrid in a big knockout stage Champions League, I think that's a big thing for the squad.
Yeah, he's right though. I think he is. He's right. I think sometimes, like as a club as well,
it's a very rational show. It's unbelievable, bro. It's I don't do a lot of shows like these. It's very strange.
As a club, like mentally for Arsenal, I think the label of Europe gets thrown at them a lot. But like going out and beating Real Madrid 3-0 is a huge thing. I did a video on it after the game, and I said like you look back at like some games where teams like say Chelsea was 2-2 against Barcelona, Liverpool 4-0 against Barcelona, the Man City 4-0 against Real Madrid, United in Juventus 3-2. They're like games that would go on, and they all went on to obviously make history by winning it. But I think those are the types of games that like change the course of a club's like history. I think that result for Arsenal could be similar in terms of context. And I just think they can just every time someone like labels them like bottlers in Europe, they can just like, well, we beat Real Madrid 3-0, and they're the only. I think what was it?
They've got to win the tie, Jamie.
Yeah, I know they had to win the tie. Yeah, obviously for it to
they won the tie.
No,
they won the tie.
Okay, no, I'm just saying that, but they have to win. If they don't,
yes,
they
obviously
they just wouldn't be able to hold on to the 3-0 Madrid victory.
No. But I think as well, what was it? I seen the stat today. Like Real Madrid don't like playing against Arsenal. They played them 3 times now and haven't beat them. So
really, they've never scored against us.
Yeah.
We the only other time we played against them was 2006, and we drew 0-0 at the Emirates and beat them 1-0 at the Bernabeu. So
to be honest with you, if you listen to Real Madrid fans, like I had Will, who's a Real Madrid fan, English speaking from America. And he speaks so different than the English fans that talk about Arsenal. He's like, we're terrible. Carlo Ancelotti cannot coach a team now.
By the way, this is what I said.
And then you hear English fans talk about Arsenal. They're rubbish. Ancelotti will school Arteta. They're amazing. This is the best team in the world. And I'm like,
I made a TikTok before the first leg being like, the only other fan base that is being rational about this game is the Madrid fans. They're the only ones that are even acknowledging that they might have some vulnerabilities that we could beat them. And even in that, all of the comments were like, that's because Real Madrid fans don't watch Arsenal like we do. And it's like, you do not watch Arsenal, clearly. But no, yeah, they actually understand. I mean, they're having an awful season by their own standards, really.
Yeah. But I think it's like they have to compete for the league regardless, and then how they do in the Champions League, that's like what defines a successful season for them. It's like semi-final, final minimum. And like even Ancelotti, I think Ancelotti's probably said to himself, this is probably my last go at it. I think the Brazil job is obviously being talked about.
He's puffing the vape at the last game, like just saying.
Yeah.
I think he's just resigned to the fact that it's impossible for him to keep his job. I honestly do.
Yeah. But I think he's just happy.
I don't think he wants to keep his job.
Yeah, I think he's done everything.
Can't be worth the stress.
Yeah, I think he wants to keep his job, bro. It's too much stress. White flags, players getting red cards, and players throwing tantrums, and Vinny's fighting with Modric, and with bro.
I also feel like this current mix of Real Madrid players is probably so far from the type of player that worked fantastically well under Carlo. I feel like that just sort of connection has now been removed between the two. I think the players that he had and he's done so well with, they identified Carlo as his top coach and they knew what he'd achieved. Whereas now I think what Carlo's done in the game, I think is just sort of probably lost that sort of connection with the younger players that are coming through Madrid now.
Can I ask a question for everyone on the panel other than Rory? If I ask you tomorrow, who would you take at your club, Carlo Ancelotti or Arteta? Who would you choose?
Carlo.
Oh, I don't know. I think Liverpool would be more suited to Arteta, to be fair. I just think with I don't know. Do you remember when Carragher, when Klopp was talking about coming to Liverpool, and he was actually asked by the Sky Sports panel at the time, he was like, who would you rather want, Ancelotti or Klopp? And he said, Liverpool is not an easy job. You need someone with energy to come in. And I think Klopp has that. I think Ancelotti now, if he went into Liverpool, he'd just be like, listen, lads, mum, I'm not arse getting you up for this game. Just go out and do what you need to do. I think that's what he's at like with Madrid. But I think it's different because the whole structure of it has changed. Like he's playing Valverde at right back. He doesn't have the same engine in midfield. Mbappe's up front. He obviously carries a lot with him. Yeah, I think I'd probably go with Arteta, to be honest, if I was picking for Liverpool.
See, I think, obviously, I don't get an opinion on what, but I would say I'd actually go.
You can be rational and just remove your Arsenal hat and think.
I'd go Ancelotti to Liverpool just for your final 2 seasons with Salah and Van Dijk, and go just let him try and take this team to another Champions League. Let's just get us another Champions League with him, and then go to your next like kind of high energy manager. Whereas Chelsea is the opposite. Chelsea, I would go Arteta.
No way. You can't have Poch and Arteta within the space.
What would be the point?
Not a chance.
What would be the point?
I know what you're going to say with the young squad and the way it's moving, but
process. You're literally in a process and a project. You're literally in the Arteta realm.
Do you know what Ancelotti would do? Ancelotti, I think, would lift.
It'd be like when he went to Everton.
No, it wouldn't. He would lift Stamford Bridge. I think if you appoint Carlo Ancelotti, I think it would be a statement in 10.
Yeah, but lifting
Stamford
Bridge would stop your players being shit.
If they did appoint Carlo Ancelotti, it would indicate a shift in mentality from the ownership that I think the fans would then be able to get behind because they know the success that Ancelotti has brought to Chelsea.
Yeah, but he'd still look at your players and go,
"Oh yeah," but he'd go, "If you're bringing me in, I'm not going to work with some of those players."
I think I'd say Ancelotti's at that stage now, though, where like it's kind of like Mourinho a few years ago, where they hit their kind of peak. Do you know what I mean? And I think Ancelotti's been around for so long; he's done it in so many different generations. But I think now it's like sometimes you do need managers with like new ideas, younger, more energy that you need to bring to a club. I think Chelsea would need that as well. To be fair, I understand where you're coming from, where like he probably the experience and like having that mentality of like a winner in the club. But I think about that young team and like everything that they would need in terms of like being there constantly at him. I think he would just be go out and play football just and see where we land. I mean, I don't think that's what they would need.
That's kind of what I was getting with the connection sort of thing. Like you picture Carlo obviously with like the cigar and a couple of the older players that were with him celebrating, doing the same. I don't picture like these younger players now being able to connect with Carlo Ancelotti's mindset like that. I just don't.
Yeah,
I just don't see it.
That's why I would take Arteta Inter instead of Ancelotti. If Inzaghi wins the league and leaves, I would take Arteta Inter. I wouldn't take Ancelotti.
You couldn't have Carlo there, could you?
Bro, I don't think Ancelotti tactically has developed over the last years. He relies so much on
his son.
I'm going to tell you what. When I watch football, you notice patterns of play, the way they play. And I see the likes of Arne Slot with patterns of play, the likes of Inzaghi with ways of playing, Arteta, Alonso. You see even Vincent Kompany. But Carlo Ancelotti is very good in man management. But I don't think like tactically he has adapted. He had so much talent at Real Madrid when he won that he needed just to get them the headlines, and then they go and do the small details that Arteta goes into. Inzaghi, you know what I mean? You watch Inter play football and you can see the details and the tactics of Inzaghi. Arteta the same. You see Arne Slot do the same. And I don't think Ancelotti does it. And I think modern football requires
a trophy cabinet in Korea over their own.
100%. There's no doubt that Ancelotti is arguably one of the GOATs with Pep and Alex Ferguson. There's no denying what he did in Milan or Bayern Munich or even like Real Madrid. But in my opinion, I think he won you one league title. Just can some Chelsea fans have some shame?
Actually. He did the double.
Yeah.
And it was arguably Drogba and Lampard's best ever season.
And then he was sacked the year after. He's not a Chelsea legend.
I think you're right. I think you're right. He hasn't adapted now. But like think about like he's been around since the 90s, so he's done it for like 3 decades. You know what I mean? He has adapted his play
as well. So when he was like learning as a player under different managers,
exactly.
Can you imagine how different it was then?
Yeah, he has adapted his style. I just think now it's like I've done everything I want to do. Well, I think is he the most successful manager in the Champions League? He's won four or five Champions Leagues. Five Champions Leagues. Like he's nothing left to prove. Do you know what I mean? And for him to adapt his playing style now would be
for me. I'm
gonna go on and do.
For me, he did an
5 years.
He has
with Mikel in the summer on Mikel's podcast, and he was basically suggesting how much weight is taken off of his job by his son tactically. Like his son did the press conference last night, I believe, or after their game.
Yeah.
He spoke a lot about their tactical setup and things like that, and that's him having his imprint on it rather than Carlo, I think.
There's
Yeah.
only
I think
one
that's
thing
what-
for Ancelotti to prove, to be honest. In modern football, I've seen Mourinho retain the league title. I've seen Mancini retain the league title. I've seen even Jurgen Klopp haven't retained the league title, but Jurgen Klopp has reached the heights of having a system that will work against the majority of the teams. Carlo Ancelotti has had a magnificent teams, right, in the history, and he has not had a style to dominate a league, even though he coached some of the best teams. And in my opinion, great coaches like do both. You can do the cups, but also I need to go to every game knowing what to expect from my team, right? And that you don't get this with Carlo Ancelotti. It relies so much on like individuals and stuff. Guys, with Milan, he won 1 league title, having that great of a team. 1. I just need you to deep that and imagine this. Imagine having all this talent and
Yeah, I don't think he doesn't have like a hugely identifiable style, really, or philosophy, which like you never see. Like when people compare managers, you say, "Oh, he's like a Mourinho or like a Guardiola or like." You never really sit here like he's like an Ancelotti because that doesn't really mean anything other than having the ability to win the most Champions Leagues of any manager.
which is
Would
its
you say?
moments thing. It's not about
That
the
was his
style.
biggest hindrance when he went to Bayern Munich, wasn't it? Because in Germany, a lot of the managers had this tactical system that he literally struggled against with Bayern Munich.
Yeah, that's why I think he needs to prove. But listen, I think guys will see what happens on Wednesday. Hour 20 minutes is good. Not a lot to talk about.
What about
Staffy
Van
didn't
Dijk's
join.
goal? Is that like comparable?
What
to a
about
company
United getting? What about United getting absolutely bent over?
There's loads more to talk about.
Yeah, we could talk about Ruben Amorim because I think that is so underwhelming what he's done since he's come to England.
See, I think
I
he's better
have
than
the-
Maresca.
I
But
have the time. You guys
Probably is
know
more, to be fair.
I am home alone and I have the time.
well, that's why you wanted to end it.
Into Milan in the semi-final.
No, if you want to speak, I actually think it's, you know what? You know, yesterday was more about Newcastle than Man United. It was more about how good Newcastle are than how shit Man United are yesterday. I have so much respect for Newcastle. I want the club to do very, very well. And I think Man United, does anybody here, just let me ask you the question. Does anybody think that Man United will ever come back in the near future, in the foreseeable future? You know what I mean by comeback.
I was thinking about
Comeback
this the
means
other day.
challenging.
I was thinking about this doing a video on that. I was like, when is acceptable for like United fans to say like we're going to be back?
So I think it will take at least I think they're going into their Arsenal moving to the Emirates era. I think if they're going to build this new stadium, they're never going to be able to. Now they survived for so long by just outspending everyone, right? It was just and Gary Neville himself said it when he claimed that Man United would overtake Arsenal again a few years ago because he was like, "Well, we'll just spend our way to doing it," and they've relied on that so heavily that I just don't think they'll be able to do it. And I think it'll be at least a decade before they're competing for a title.
Didn't Gary Neville said that they will win the Champions League before Liverpool and the league before Liverpool?
Well, unfortunately, Gary Neville says a lot of things, but yeah, they won't. They won't win the Champions League before Liverpool. They won't be in the Champions League, let alone win it.
No, that was already disproven because Liverpool won the Champions League.
Well, yeah,
it's like what we were saying earlier though as well. It's not like United just don't have to compete with like the top 6 now. Like Newcastle are going to be there, Villa are going to be there, Forest are going to be there. Do you know what I mean? There's teams that are around them that are going to be competing, and they have to get by them in order to be able to get back into, say, the Champions League and then obviously win it.
They're all great examples of clubs that have turned around their fortunes in such a small space of time, though, as well.
Yeah, that's true. But I just think, I don't know. I think it's like what we were saying earlier. They're nimble because they're so they're smaller. Whereas like everything United does, it's like there's scrutiny on it. Like if they make a bad signing, even like we were talking about Lenny Euro at the start of like a few videos back, and we were saying like just justifying how can they spend that money and like his impact and stuff. Like that's a sign of £60 million for a teenager. Whereas if say if Forest went out and bought someone for say 30 million and it didn't really work out, there wouldn't be as much scrutiny on it. Do you know what I mean? It's in this terms of impact. It's just everything United does, it's going to come under scrutiny. And even like all the stuff that's going on behind the scenes with like taking away like meals and the restructuring and everything. Like, yeah, I agree with Roy. I think a decade, and like you're coming up to that, then what, 25 years without a league?
Yeah, but you also
crazy.
don't get that
Would it
time.
be 22, 23 years if it's like
But that's the thing, though. United won't get. They almost won't get the time to see through. Like, if you look at a Bournemouth who finished like 13th last season and then wherever 9th this season, say, the club will be looking at that going. Bournemouth will be looking at that, and the fan base will be looking at that, going, "That's progress. This is good. We're on the right track." If United go from 14th this season to 10th next season, Amorim will get sacked, and they'll say this isn't working because 10th is unacceptable for United. And so that's where I just think there's going to be a lot of these kind of changing things that might have actually worked long term. Arteta only survived at Arsenal by the skin of his teeth, really, because he'd won an FA Cup, and I don't think you'll see that again. Like, I think Postecoglou's going to be gone before he gets the chance to do anything. I think he's far worse than Arteta, but yeah, I just think it's going to be very, very difficult.
What if United win Europa League?
They won't.
That'd be huge. That would be huge if they did win the Europa League.
It would. I actually only think it would save them. I think that it would just mean that they were in the Champions League next season, which would actually hinder them in the Premier League again, and they'd probably drop out of all of it for the following season. But
well, I just think like
it'd be beneficial
mentally as well. Like, I think for the whole, because like right now it's just they're looking around like, where do we take any positives from anything? Do you know what I mean? Like, none of our players are good. Our performances are terrible. Like, the only thing they're hanging on for right now is the Europa League, and if they do that, then they can just say, well, it's basically like we won a trophy and got fourth. Do you know what I mean? So I think that would be big for them in that aspect. But I don't know. I think people are like, I see people saying in chat like we're biased and stuff like that, and we're talking about United, but like that's the whole thing of United, because of the success that they've had in the past. They always will come under scrutiny. Anything they do will be talked about, and there's not even a United person on this panel. We're talking about it. You know what I mean? That's the level of criticism that they take. So yeah, I think that's why it's going to be so difficult for them to go back.
If they win Europa League, they fast track that decade to like 3-4 years.
I'm not sure they do.
It depends what they do.
There's so many changes going on at that club behind the scenes that it's completely changing its DNA now.
They could almost do with, actually, if they were going to somehow like get themselves into Champions League, they could almost do with that being another couple of years down the line. I think if they went straight into it next year, I think they'd really struggle in the Champions League. I think the Champions League games would cause them to also struggle in the Premier League, and I could easily see them next season not finishing in European spots and also having an early exit from the Champions League. And then you're like, well, it's not actually helped us massively.
But the reason why I'm talking about if they win Europa League, because they can attract the like of Eucharist and the likes of good players to Man United, especially because Amorim is there. If they win Europa League and the Champions League, they won't be able to attract anyone if they're not in the Champions League, to be honest.
I don't know, Mo. I think players now are looking at them and saying, like, say if they get Champions League, they win Europa League by whatever way they do it. I think people will be looking at them saying, if I go there and they have another bad season, the likelihood is they can't keep winning the Europa League. Do you know what I mean? And I think people will be looking at the way so many players go to that club and just, like, look at Højlund. Like, he's after going there 70 million and all the fans want him out. They say he's absolutely crap. Where is he going to go now? Who's going to pick him up or take a chance on him? He's going to have to basically start his career again, considering, like, where he came from. Do you know what I mean? So I think
he's looking at going back to Italy. So
yeah, like young players are going to be looking at them saying, "I don't want to go there." Look at Lenny Euro, who's obviously 60 million and he's had a few injuries, I know, but I think he's had a tough time since he started there, just because of everything that goes on and everything that follows them around. So I think
Davish is right. I think a lot of players have been going to United for the paycheck, and I think they're going to reach a point with building the new stadium, and you can already tell with the money that they're trying to save, they're questioning whether or not they want to give Kobbie Mainoo what he wants. Like, they're not going to be, like, those paychecks aren't going to be there for players, and so I just, like a Gyökeres, if you've got the choice between Arsenal and Man United, like,
not sure, no, Arsenal, not even.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about someone like Osimhen, who's currently on loan at Galatasaray?
And for some reason, then
he wants $300,000 a week.
And for some reason, Osimhen is like, the reports say he prefers Man United. I'm like, why?
Because I think he grew up, I think Mikel said it, or when they interviewed him, it was Chelsea or United were the clubs that he had huge affection to as a youngster.
But he wants for
I'm not sure why would you.
Yeah, I don't know whether they'll pay that, Rory. I agree. I think Ratcliffe's being so incredibly tight on the restraints there that they're going to be allowed to spend with their financials and stuff. You listen to him speak when he did that interview with Gary Neville, like that he is cracking down massively. He's going to change the way it works hugely for Manchester United.
Did you see some of the noise that they were saying that he that was a lie about they were near bankruptcy?
He said it though, so it
I
must
know.
have come from
But
somewhere.
apparently he was like playing up to it a little bit, saying like we were close to bankruptcy. To like,
I think
because obviously that's
like
that
English
he's doing, do you know what I mean?
satire, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it was like the way, because basically they were close to running out of like very easy to spend cash, but they were never in danger of going bankrupt, because it's like, okay, well, if you got to that point, then there are X, Y, and Z things that you could do to not go bankrupt. I think it's so it definitely like dramatized the situation. Yeah.
But yeah, 10 years. I'll take another 10 years of misery for them.
But away from that, I think Amorim has just been so underwhelming. I know his squad isn't great, but I really think he's shown that he might not be at the level to cope with the Premier League.
I'd say he's regretting it so much. I'd say he was at it. I think as well, he did want to obviously come in at the end of the season. And I think he is probably regretting not pushing for that more and finishing it out the season at Sporting, because I think he's just come into an absolute like shit show. And you look like with Ten Hag. Ten Hag went there after being like a revelation with Ajax, getting to a semi-final of the Champions League and had a really bright future in front of him as a manager. Now, like a lot of teams are looking at him and be like, no, we don't want you. And I think Amorim is potentially going down that route.
They needed Antonio Conte for 1 year, fix the mentality of the club and the players, and then they get Ruben Amorim. They need someone that will shift the mentality.
Because look at Tottenham. You have to... Yeah. He went there to shift the mentality, and then he basically ended up leaving saying, I'll never be able to do it.
Yeah, but hold on. He actually shifted the mentality of Spurs. They needed to let him go after the first year and now get a player to build on that. But in every club
I don't think
that
he shifted
Conte has managed...
They hired Ange.
He hated the mentality of that club.
Yeah. No. He shifted the mentality of the players.
The mentality, and he went, there is no saving this.
No
at
chance.
Inter, at Chelsea, he went back to winners. At Inter, he did the same. At Juventus, he did the same. Napoli now, look at, they're challenging now back again. I think Conte is a short-term solution for you. Might not win, but to get you up there, in the league especially, and then you build on this. You keep Antonio Conte a second year or third year, you are doomed. You're done. I think because he requests a lot of stuff. I think you need someone that is ruthless at Antonio Conte. You can tell that I like him.
I think this is the whole thing, though. It's like, where do you start? What do you do to change the fortunes of Man United? Nobody knows. You know what I mean? It's been 12 years since Ferguson left, 13 years, and like they've tried so many different things. They tried to bring in experienced managers and Mourinho. They tried to bring in experienced players, give them massive wages. Now they're trying to go the other way, bring in young players. That's not working at the minute, but a young manager as well. It's like there's so many things that they've tried, and it's just doesn't seem to be working. So
it's all about the club. Look, listen. I know we're gonna end the show in second. For some whatever reason, Staffy just woke up and decided to join, but we're going to end the show. We're talking about money. Staffy, I was literally about to end the show. So.
Bro, listen, let me tell you something. I am not reliant for early shows, okay? I'm like a bear. I hibernate. You don't know when I'm waking up. It could be in any moment now. So if I wake up and there's 5 minutes left or there's an hour left, if I'm there, I'm there. I'll join. You know.
Anyway,
so,
we're not gonna stay. We already spoke about everything. To be honest with you,
I tuned in when you guys were talking about Carlo, and I'm not gonna lie. I was more intrigued to talk about Carlo than to talk about United, because I actually said that last week on Straight Facts, between the big managers, he's the most overrated manager ever, and I was actually more interested in talking about that. You know, anyway, but then you talked to United. I was like, damn, this is my
your alarm next week, Staffy, and we can chat about it after
trust me, there's no alarm that's gonna wake me up.
Maybe next week. But listen, people. Listen, people.
Wait, hold on. I gotta get my take on my night. I didn't just join so people could see my face and then we end the stream. I was talking about United real quick. I'll take like 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
I heard some of the things that you guys said. And actually, let me say this. I was on Said's stream yesterday, okay? And the things I got called by the chat yesterday for basically not just running to Amorim out as the only reason that everything is going to get fixed now and he's the biggest issue. The way I got ridiculed I got called deluded. I got called everything under the sun. Everything. I got cooked for everything yesterday for saying that. You guys are actually spot, except when you talk about Euro. Please drop the Euro thing. He's actually been good over like the last, like, I don't know, 14, 15 games. Please leave him alone. Other than that, the team actually is trash. And I've came to a conclusion, Mo, since our show yesterday. I actually want Emery out now. And I'll tell you why. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why I want Emery out. Number one, there's a few things in his system that I think won't cope with this United team moving forward. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't think he's a good manager. I actually want him out because I'm at more acceptance that United will be an inferior team over the next decade more than being a good team over the next decade. Then, let me just put this into context for you. There's still United fans yesterday. One of you guys were just talking about the potential of us winning the Europa League or something. I forgot who just asked it. There is still United fans that are saying if he doesn't win the Europa League, sack him. These are the demands that we're getting right now. There's still people that look at this team and they think they have a divine right to win a trophy because our name is Manchester United, even though these players are not Manchester United players. And we all know that. The fan base will tell you that our front line, as an example, wouldn't get in most 19 teams in the Premier League outside of ours, yet they think this team should go ahead and win the Europa League. And I actually think if we win the Europa League, it might be the biggest achievement I've seen for Michigan. And I've lived through the doubles, the Champions League, everything but the treble because I was basically too young to witness it. Other than that, I think this would be the biggest achievement because of how bad this team is. I look at this team and I'm like, you know what? We probably should have kept Ruud van Nistelrooy and we should have signed an inferior manager. A manager who's going to come in and instead of doing what Emery tried to do yesterday, which is use the goalkeeper a little bit more on the ball, try to invert one of your three center backs in the midfield and try to build up from the back and all that. Bro, we can't do that. We can't do that. We're doing what Southampton do, which is just basically turn the ball over. You know how Southampton, every game, they just gift a goal because of how bad they are on the build-up? We might as well just go to this mentality of like, bro, we just go into games trying to survive, either limit the score sheet or either try to shithouse a win or a draw, and you move on from here. Because I generally don't see how we can build a squad for how Emery wants to play. And he's a little bit of an ideologist. That's one thing I've always said about him. I don't see how with the budget restrictions that we have, with the wage issues that we have and the players that we have to offload, are we going to recruit talent over the next 3 years where we're going to play decent football? I generally don't see it. I see people complain about the way the club
restricted, Staffy, to a certain system that is so stylistically based around Amorim and who he is that you put yourself in a dangerous position to spend the amount of money it will cost to improve your squad to be good enough to work under Amorim. That if he fails,
I disagree with you, but finish.
I mean, the evidence is there for Manchester United to look at it. And the hardest problem they've got now is to decide, can they back Amorim off of what they've seen with the evidence that's there right now?
Here's the thing. Here's where you're wrong. Regardless, some of these players will be replaced with certain profiles, no matter who the manager is. So, as an example, goalkeeper. Can we all agree if Mo's the manager tomorrow at Man United, he still needs a new goalkeeper?
No, I don't. I'll play Onana because I think Onana's good. I think your club is cooked.
Sure. Good luck.
Ex-Inter fan.
You'll get sacked in 6 months.
You literally asked the one person that
loves up.
Center backs. Can we all agree that we need a better ball-playing center back who can actually also defend and rely on other than Lindelof and Maguire and whoever else you want to think of? We can all agree on that.
Yarrow.
We can all agree that when you're using a build-up yesterday of a 4-4-2, what did Rory say?
I said Yarrow.
Yeah, well, Yarrow can't do it alone. He's great. Even yesterday when we were building up with 4-4-2, our pivot in the midfield, we were trying to use Lindelof and Ugarte. Can we all agree that you need better talent in a build-up that's better than Lindelof and Ugarte? Yes, we all would. So as much as you say that, Dan, I don't think you're getting specialists in a way where, like, if Amorim leaves, oh my God, I'm stuck with this player. How can I use him? No, because I'm always going to need a competent goalkeeper. I'm always going to need a competent defender. I'm always going to need a competent midfielder. Those are just simple examples. I could go even further, by the way. Like Højlund, we all know who the manager is. No matter who the manager is, you still need a better striker. You still need to move on Garnacho and get a better
Or you
winger.
can get Gasperini.
Gasperini at United.
Yeah, that's it, Mo, isn't it? You then have to go down the route.
They would
of
actually
employing,
love him because this guy's mental. He just attack. He loves it. You know when the crowd of United just screams attack, they would love Gasperini. But they would try to gaslight me in a year and say he's a shit
They'd
coach,
love
even
Ange.
though he won the Europa League with Atalanta.
And Postecoglou at Man United, I'm here for it. Oh my God.
No. But yeah, this is how I get to a conclusion that Amorim actually needs to go. Because number one, he's also wasting his time at United. They're never going to build him a squad where he can go and achieve anything that he wanted to achieve. Now people are doubting him.
That's what I'm telling you. That's what I said to you. I don't believe now they're going to ever spend the money on him because this first spell's been so poor. There's no belief there that they can afford to spend 200 to 400 million on backing a manager that has given them this sort of sample.
It wouldn't be like United.
You know what? They're going to
sign
sign the likes of Dorgo and these guys.
It wouldn't be like
That is
United to
just-
give them 250 million in a summer and then sack them 10 games into a season.
We'd owe him like 20 million, which is one of the reasons why they're going. I don't think he was going anywhere anyways. Like, I'm just saying. It's just like the delusion that United fan base are at.
Staffy, I
Like,
agree with
it's-
you. That's what I said about with Amorim. Like when he was at Sporting, he said that he wanted to wait until the end of the season because he wanted to see it out. And United were like, "No, come in now. We need you now." And now it looks like it might have hampered his own actual ability to be able to get the most out of the squad or to have a successful career at United because it's just gone in. It's just for 8 months, just got absolutely hammered every weekend. And United fans, naturally, when your team is losing, you need to look at someone for issues, and they're looking to a manager because they're sick of what the players are producing. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's just like
We've also
I think
seen
the United
like,
fans
Smith
still live in a
Rashford
delusion.
goes
now.
off to Villa, performs. He wasn't able to get the best out of some of your better players, and they've.
Rashford was more of a financial thing. That's one thing I always down because like the last time he played for us, got a brace, and then just never came back. Like, there's no way a manager saw an attacker score a brace and like, oh, you know what's the issue? You're not playing again. Like we all know that was more of a political thing to get the wages off. I think the same thing with Anthony, same thing with Sancho. Casemiro was the only one that kind of survived the phase out, and it's because we really just had too many
Couldn't
injuries.
get rid of him, and you couldn't get rid of him.
Yeah,
He
We
didn't
could
wanna
have.
go
We
to
could have. We
Saudi.
still want to get rid of him in the summer, but it reached a point where we had we went to Spurs and we had Lindelof and the under 19s on the bench. It was only Lindelof who was a senior. Everyone else was under 19. It reached a point where if you don't play him right now and you play an academy kid, that's insane. Like, all right, something is wrong over here. So it just became too sussed out. Where you know what? Fuck, he has to play now. He's been on the bench for about 2 months. It doesn't make sense not to play him now. So I think Casemiro's the only one that survived it. But the rest, as you guys mentioned, it's more of a financial thing. And honestly, I agree with you guys. And I honestly, I'm so convinced and I'm content with that as well. Like, United could go another decade, honestly, in my opinion, by not competing or winning. Maybe you could compete. So sometimes teams can compete out of nowhere. But winning, I think United can go a whole decade without it. And I'm very content with that. Like, I'm at a well understanding where I look at so many factors. And I'm like, there's a very high possibility that all these things don't work at the same time. And that leads to us not competing. Rather than all of this working at the same, because I have to trust an ownership that I don't know much about. I have to trust recruitment that I've only known a year about them. And I have to trust a manager who wants to play a certain way, who I just met a few months ago. Now to get all these correct ingredients to be a little bit more ideal and actually get us to there. And I can't bet on all these things happening at once. It is
Don't
more
say that.
logical that it won't work than it will work.
Don't say that. You're a big Man United. You'll get back.
But
As
that's the
Gary Neville
delusion,
said.
Mo. But that's the
And that's
delusion.
the
And when I say
delusion.
that, you know what they say to me? I'm
you're a
lowering
big
the
Man
standard.
United.
Habibi, I didn't lower the standard. I just found the standard that this club set to us. I have no control over the standard. You think I don't want to win a league every year? I want to win a league every year. I want to win a trophy every year. But when you tell them the truth and you tell them it's more likely that all this won't happen and you won't win, they'll say that you're lowering the standard. You know, they call me a top red now. Wallahi al-Azim, they call me a top red. Yesterday, they called me a top red because I didn't want to say manager out. In the same breath, I said it's because of the ownership, it's because of the recruitment, it's because of the players. So I called out other parties. I just found that calling out the manager is the laziest one. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to just call out the manager because I can trust that if we only change the manager and come back in 12 months, we'll still be shit. I think there's a better chance that if you improve your recruitment, that you'll be in a better place in 12 months versus staying in the same shit recruitment, but only changing the manager. Because I don't want any manager to come in and have to handle Hoyland, Garnacho, Unana, Nogarte. But that makes me a top red somehow because I'm calling out the club rather than just the manager. So I don't know. Maybe that's why it's easier if Amorim leaves because now people could stop saying I'm an Amorim stan because I don't care for Amorim. It's just the idea of another manager having to suffer. You know, we had 6 Ollie players on the pitch yesterday. 6. Some of them were there from the Louis van Gaal era. Louis van Gaal hasn't managed United in like 10 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But that doesn't sound professional. So now I'm a top red. Somehow. That equates to top red. So I don't know, bro. I don't know.
It's a lot of frustration. But listen, people, I want to thank everyone that joined us. Thank you so much for joining. All these guys' channels are in the description. Rory Talks Football. Go and check out his channel. Drops videos every day. And also Rory Talks Football on Instagram and TikTok. Jamie's story as well on Instagram and on YouTube, Staffy TV. And then, of course, along with Tom Little, who couldn't join us today. I will see you guys tomorrow. And we are out of here, people.